Welcome to Coast View, the show that every single day celebrates the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi such a great place to live, work, and play. Hey, listen, we have a great show today. In the second half of the show, we're going to be joined by Austin Golding. He's the president and CEO of Golding Barge Line, young guy in his 30s. And he's the CEO of this company, his family company, and they do very significant work in the chemical and petroleum industry for refineries mostly, but they do tons of work in the petroleum industry. And what they do is the chemical products and petroleum products, they handle the U.S. inland waterway system barging that product. So he's in a great position to understand the latest as it relates to the global markets. And it's going to be a dynamic conversation about how complicated the global energy market is these days and how it's been sort of exacerbated by some of the administration policies at a time where there's so many variables. And unfortunately, it's not going to be an easy way out on this one. And Austin will be talking more about that in the second half. And the first half, I have my friend Hunter Dawkins, who's the publisher and CEO of the Gazebo Gazette in Pass Christian, and someone I really enjoy visiting with over the course of Coast View. It's been a while, Hunter, but how you been, my friend?
It has been a while. My good friend, former publisher, Ricky Mathews. There's been a lot of changes all the way across the board, and I'll look forward to talking to you about those and where we're going in the newspaper industry and such. So
yeah, well, it's good to see you. It looks like every time we meet, I remember you made some renovations to your office, and we didn't see much of a background, and then you started bringing furniture in, and then you started winning awards. For the radio audience, you can see behind him awards all over the wall. Unbelievable number of awards. Yeah. That my friend has done from this little Gazebo Gazette paper that really started right after Hurricane Katrina and became this like big time important community newspaper. Hunter bought it along the way. And here we are. You're continuing to cover not just the Pass Christian area, but issues that are important to that part of the region of coastal Mississippi. How's it been?
It's been definitely interesting would be the best word to say. And I guess, a lot of the local politics, a lot of the regional politics, a lot of big time sports activities that we've had going on. And, just like you said, as far as in the marine industry, as far as in the drilling and things as such, I know you're going to talk to Austin about that later, but that's definitely been a big congressional issue, which, by the way, I want to tell everybody, make sure to go vote, today is meaning, this was on the Tuesday publication.
Yeah.
Yes, but that being said, though, it's definitely without the news. And every day, people always ask me, when they come across me, you live in this town of 6,000 and you represent an area of a small area of Long Beach, Pass Christian, a little bit of Gulfport. How do you get news? The news comes to me all the time. And just as I'm sure you're aware of being in the Sun Herald, of trying to, equate the right areas to be able to put things together. So
yeah, it's always a challenge. You never have enough resources, but I know this even more challenging today just because of the lay of the land and, the digital tsunami that has sort of overcome the industry. But how are you holding up?
Well, it's funny you say that about the digital. Really, the thing that's really helped me out a bunch, Ricky, is having the website, having access to different social media platforms, and, just trying to maintain the old, trying to get the ads, trying to get legals, trying to just kind of push things along. But people generally like the fact that, you're keeping up with everything daily on the news platform. So
the business is healthy?
Yeah, it is. But just as I'm sure you're aware of, every time that I go up to Hattiesburg to Signature Offset, who prints my paper in Hattiesburg, the invoices get a little bit larger each time, And I really want people to know that, I'm the only independent own newspaper within 150 miles. And that's, that's a give and a take. I'm not necessarily trying to brag, but it's more or less is I want people to understand how much it is to go in to put into this business, because I got maybe a couple of veterans and a few guys that help out with some articles, but it's pretty much me all the time, and but once again, I'm not asking for any type of, maneuver or, people to feel sorry. I mean, it is what it is, and we have to take care of it. And I do a pretty good job, I think. So, at least
you
I'm
do,
told.
Hunter. I follow you closely. What's important about what you're doing? I've had several long conversations with Alberto Ibargüen from the Knight Foundation, former president and publisher of El Nuevo Herald and Miami Herald, someone who's a really good friend of mine. He had become the chairman of the Knight Foundation just before Katrina. And so within a week or two, he was actually here on the ground working with us. And, it led to the Knight Center for a nonprofit center in Gulfport, and millions of other dollars spent in coastal Mississippi to help us recover. But he and I have talked about this many times, and that is the changing media landscape. And what he often says is the amount of noise that is occurring on the national stage is almost impossible to sort through that. So where the Knights Foundation has spent literally over $300 million in investing in small efforts, community efforts, they've really focused their energy in local news, because at the end of the day, that's where true democracy takes place, is at the local level, and it just sort of boils up from there. So the role that you're playing, Hunter, and helping keep Long Beach and Pass Christian, and to some extent other communities, when you have an opportunity to cover that, that information that you're providing, people are really, really eager to get it. Sure. And what makes the business work, whether you're doing it in print or whether you're doing it online, what makes your business work is that if you have the readers, you're able to sell those readers to advertisers. Now, advertisers can find other ways to reach people. But what's important about what you're doing is you're getting people who are highly engaged in citizenry in the communities that you cover. And that provides you an opportunity to say, these are more engaged readers than you would get on the internet or get on social media. These are highly engaged. And you're actually selling a premium eyeball to a customer. And I think you just have to continue to make that point clear. The other part of that is the point that you were making, and you're not asking for handouts, but the reality is when advertisers have a choice to either go spend the money on social media or go spend it on the internet or spend it somewhere else, having the opportunity to understand what you do, and frankly, what we do here at the radio stations that are part of SuperTalk, because they're also locally owned, is this opportunity to rare these days, to be honest with you, because most newspapers are owned by big conglomerates. Most radio stations are owned by big conglomerates. Most TV stations are owned by big conglomerates. Where the more locally owned something is, the more they have skin in the game to the success of the community. And I think we can't say that enough, to be honest with you, Hunter. And I think that's the key to success in what you're doing.
Well, and also too, Ricky, I'm very lucky that, both of my parents were great friends with you, and, great friends with a lot of individuals in this community. And that really helped set me up in coming from outside to coming back in, and really developing a good relationship with a lot of advertisers, a lot of subscribers, a lot of just individual people in the community. And, it's still, people know that they can come up to me and on the street and say, "Hey, Hunter, we didn't like this," or "Hey, Hunter, we did like this," because I've gotten some pretty rough emails, just as I'm sure you have, being the former publisher of the Sun Herald. There's quite a number of people out there that they'll go after you, and you just have to. I guess you have to take it with a grain of salt, and if you're doing it right, then they wouldn't be coming after you, I guess.
Listen, man, it wasn't long before I left the Sun Herald. The last readership study that we had done, the cumulative readership of over a week's time was somewhere in the range of 150,000 people. Okay. Now, I came when you're the publisher, and of course I went on to Mobile and New Orleans as well. And New Orleans was involved in some really very significant strategic efforts that made a lot of noise in the community, and for good reason. I get that, but the point is that it's not unlike a politician. You're going to hear from everybody. You really are. Sure. Most people are somewhere in the middle. You got 5 or 10 that are on that end and 5 or 10 that are on that other end. And in the middle, you have a bunch of reasonable people. But too often you're hearing from the outside ends. And that can, if you let them in your mind represent how you feel about getting that negative feedback from them, represent that to everyone, then you've really done yourself a injustice. Why don't we do this? We're coming to the end of this segment. We're talking with Hunter Dawkins from the Gazebo Gazette. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to Coast View. A great segment coming up next in the second half of the show with Austin Golding. We're going to talk about the energy sector, petroleum, oil, energy independence, the global markets. It's going to be a very interesting conversation. We're having an interesting conversation now with my friend Hunter Dawkins. I told him during the break that it's always easy for me to chat with him because I lived in his world for so long. Now, look, I was not a publisher of a small newspaper, and I had the opportunity to be on the Mississippi Press Association board for a number of years and got to know a lot of really, really dedicated community publishers. And what I know about what you do is that the buck stops with you across the board, whether it's writing a story and feedback from a story, whether it's the production stuff that has to happen to create the website or the newspaper, the printed version that people see, whether it's the advertising side, whether it's the business office side, the buck stops with you. And there is no rest for the weary in your world, is there?
Yes, sir. Well, as we were talking about during the break, the information that just gets on a small on a specific article on this covering that, everybody starts to say this, that, or the other. But as I told you before, Ricky, I'm not leaving Pascagoula. I'm going to be supportive. I've been supportive of the high schools, the school districts themselves, a number of Chamber of Commerce activities, things as such, all the way around the community. And I think that once people get to know you and I hope they know me after 5 years of running the paper, that they give me the ability to say, hey, this is what, Hunter's about. Although, I'm also looking into setting up, and I was going to ask your opinion on what you thought about this, setting up an advisory committee where I have outside people come in and just say some things. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to change the way I'm doing things. It's more or less just hearing from people in general, and they can get something off of their chest and things as such.
Hunter, you should do it. I did it at the Sun Herald. We call them community advisory committees. I did it in Mobile, and then also at the same time we published the Mississippi Press. I did it at the Mississippi Press, and then when I went to New Orleans, I formed an organization there as well. It's a great way to get a cross section. I got some from the public sector, some from the private sector, some from nonprofit community. I mean, just a great cross section. CEOs, presidents from universities. Just a great cross section. And the feedback I got was just incredible. And it also gives you an opportunity to sort of explain things, because at times there's no way to avoid that if you do your job well, that you're going to be hung up in some controversies from time to time. Well, for example, I'll give you an example, and you can tell me how you feel about this. Sure. But from time to time, we may find that a public body has met in a legal executive session, for example, or maybe they're not doing proper notice for a meeting, or something that has to do with the public meetings laws. And
something that I've ran across with just recently. So, yeah.
Okay, but what happens is your role as a watchdog, your role is to make sure that the light of day is on the public conversation, and there are laws that decide when something should be in executive session. In other words, out of the view of the public. and there are laws that say specifically when it must be in view of the public. And your job, if you're doing it well, if you're really worth your salt, and if, as Alberto Ibargüen, one of the most respected newsmen in America today, what he will say is that we have a role to collect the information and disseminate the information and make sure it's trustworthy and understandable, so that people can make the choices they need to make about their government. That's what our role is. Sure. And sometimes doing that ruffles feathers. I know that. I've sued public bodies before. I know what that looks like, but we never hesitated from doing our role. And here's the thing: we could sue them on this issue, but still communicate with them on this issue. I never wanted that suit on that public records issue or that public body, whether they should meet in the sunshine or not issue, to define our relationship. I would say, but look at the things we're doing over here to support you and make sure you understand what's going on. But it's tough. It's tough. Well, the more local you get, the tougher it is. Just as
I'll let you know, Ricky, that I have a pretty good relationship with Tom Hood, who is the chair of the Ethics Commission, as I did work for his brother for a little while at the Attorney General's office way back, 100 years ago. But that being said, Tom and I are very good, very friendly with each other, and it's more or less of a just like you said, trying to provide the information. It's not about browbeating anybody, going after any person, doing this or doing that. It's more about getting the information out. People in America are allowed to have public information, and that's simple.
Well, what I also find is that sometimes people who come into office for, whether it's a mayor or city council, and maybe they were in business for a very long period of time, now they're in this elected role. They don't fully understand or appreciate the laws surrounding, some of how they might function.
And to be fair, in local elections, these individuals have a good purpose. There's no reason. I find it very rare. About 90% of the people that come into a local elected office, they don't do it to go run a sham on anybody or anything as such. They do it because they come out for a good purpose. The problem is when they're presented with certain opportunities and they don't necessarily know where things go in the law and putting things together. And that's when we get involved to some extent, and they don't necessarily like that, and they think that myself is after them. It's
Well, I've been there, buddy. I would say
I know you have. Yeah.
I would say have tough skin, do what you know is right, and your readers will appreciate you for it. And here's the thing: we can describe. Let's just say Pasquishan for now. There are other communities also, but Pasquishan, it's a bedroom community. But it's an affluent community as well. You have a lot of educated people, and I know that there's there are poor people who live in the community. I understand that, and they're engaged in the community too. Sure. But the point is that there's a really well-educated, well-informed, really doggedly determined citizenry in that community that wants to know what's going on, and when they find out what's going on, they act on it. And sometimes acting on what they read causes pain for elected officials, and they have to blame somebody, right? That's just the way the system works.
That is
but what I would say is that in time, I would just keep your head high, and time will bear it out that your passion for the community and role that you play in that community is important. And if they don't want you covering the things that are questionable, then don't do questionable things. Just try to follow the law. And, that's just the way it works.
Yes, sir. You're 100% right. And I definitely understand, the amount of work that you had to do and how long you guys had to go into that. And I definitely am more than trusting in your advice on that. So.
Well, keep the truth on your side. Be reasonable. I used to say, just because we can do a story doesn't mean we should. If a story, if a story is going to happen, but it has limited positive impact on the community.
Sure.
Sometimes you have to make these choices every single day. What am I going to cover? And you should always cover the ones that have the most public, benefit.
Well, just like last week on the front page of my paper this last week was the two groups, the Knights of Columbus and the Veterans of Foreign Wars. They went and honored a bunch of memorials at the cemeteries, the local cemeteries, put flags on there. That's a great story. That's something that's worth a shot for anybody. And, I interviewed the mayor, the leaders of the councils, and a few aldermen, and that's something that I think is great. But I don't get any, and I'm not looking for it, but I don't get any, supporting a great job, Hunter, great article. But then the moment that I mention this, that, or the other in any other specific article, it's,
Well, Haley Barber has a lot of Haleyisms.
Yeah.
But one of his Haleyisms is that the media doesn't cover planes that land safely. That's just the way it is. Well, so only when the pain quotient goes up do you hear from them.
From a certain extent, he's right. But then also in the back of the paper, they're doing stories on a baseball team that, a 12-year-old baseball team that won the College World Series. And, you can't have it both ways that you want it. So.
Well, listen, I would say keep your head high. You're doing a great job. Time heals all issues. There's always going to be a natural friction between a newspaper and elected officials. There's no way around it. Sure. But I think the sum total of the relationship can mostly be positive because there's a lot of good things to focus on, as you're pointing out as well. So, hey, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate you. You take care of yourself.
This has been Hunter Dawkins from the Gazebo Gazette. Have a great day. Oh, excuse me. We'll see you after this break, and we're going to talk about the global petroleum situation. We'll see you after this break.